Welcome to the show today. My guest's name is Heather Quisel-Brown, and I wanted to have her on the show because I feel like she has an insight that is valuable in these times and all times. And I like how she describes her work. She is there for people, giving advice and guidance and influencing their journey when they've lost someone, as you say, Heather, damn important. So I thank you for coming to the show and for sharing your story with us a bit, and also trying to tackle this very difficult topic that many people watching can relate to. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Well, I've read a lot about your story, and just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. And you are a widow, as am I. This show is not specifically gauged toward widows for today's purposes, but mostly, like you said, anyone who's lost someone important. So if you want to share a little bit about your story, I want to let you say it in your own words.
Oh, yes. My experience with grief just landed on me like a ton of bricks when I lost my late husband, Larry, 3 years ago. He was 41 years old, super healthy, NCAA athlete, should never have died, and his heart just literally stopped one day. And, anybody who has, loss is loss is loss, right? And I'm never quite sure if I feel luckier that it was all of a sudden and I had no chance to prepare, or if I would have rather, a longer, maybe illness or something that would have given me the chance. But as it were, he died 3 years ago. We have 3 children. They are teenage range. And I have since remarried and am blending families. So I like to joke, I like to do everything at once. If it's complicated, let's just complicate it more, and just get it over and done with so we can get back to like some sort of like regularly scheduled programming.
Yes.
It hasn't happened yet.
I don't know that it does.
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying in that I think too, for me losing my husband, I just wanted a family again. My son was young, 5 years old, and I wanted him to have that someone. And as I said to you before we started recording, my book was called Big Shoes for a reason, because there was a lot to fill, and I think sometimes we get caught up in that. We want to, like you said, just reset, like, okay, now what does my life look like and how do I fix things? And as you're learning, and as I've learned over the last 17 years, is there's no switch, there's no quick fix. So let's talk about one of the things that I really gravitated toward in your story is, the moving on part. It is about owning that grief, feeling that grief, trying not to skip over steps that are really real. They kind of do come in that order of grief that we hear so much about. But what I really respect about your story and your path is that you're trying to encourage others to also pick themselves up, brush themselves off, and figure out what that new life looks like. So what made you decide to be so public with your story and willing to share it in this way, with the idea that you don't spend a lot of time talking about the hurt of it, but more of how do you move forward?
Yeah, it became one of those things I couldn't not talk about, Lisa. In my life before loss, I was a very public, sort of in that micro influencer space. I was very much a leader in my community, in my career. And it was very natural for me already to be sharing like real life experiences to encourage people. And I was in the mindset and coaching space for entrepreneurs. And so, loss, just, pulls the wool or pulls the rug out from under you. And I had to go away for a bit to figure it out. But it became, just like I said, it just became something I couldn't not talk about. It is my life. It is real. It is the biggest thing I've ever experienced. And maybe it's because of the personal development, the mindset training I have, or maybe it's just my personality. Like, I'm wired to teach what I've learned. And I'm just wired to teach through life experiences. And I feel like when Larry passed away in my adulthood, unfortunately, or lucky for me, I had known many widows. My long time ago, I taught preschool. I was an early educator, and so many little babies, children lost their fathers while I was teaching them. And, I remember as Larry passed away, kind of my mind just kind of going through all these different widows I knew from my life, and just seeing they're thriving now. Those children, they're in college, they're getting married, they're successful. Like these women, like there is life after loss, and there's love after loss, and there's meaning after loss. And so I just had this, like, this could be my path too. It's gonna be, I'm gonna make it my path. And so I just feel like pain can take you down, Lisa, and it takes a lot of really good people down. But I don't want that for me, and I don't want that for other people that I can relate to,
Yeah, my experience was very different in that I had one really good friend who had lost her husband. I didn't have a community in that way. She always used to say that we did the widow walk together. She was in her 50s when she lost her husband. I was 32 years old when I lost mine. And she was perfectly content to never remarry, never date, never have that in her life again. And I was not. I just kind of, I guess at 32, that looked like a really long time to, now that I'm 50, it still seems like a long time. But I think that sometimes in who we lose in our life starts to shape who we are, right? I think we start to learn about our priorities, and our values determine our priorities, and then how we start to navigate our lives. I was very motivated by making sure my son had a beautiful life, not in spite of losing his father, but even because of it. What are we supposed to learn from this?
Yeah.
There is a lesson in this at every single turn, even today. And I think that most people who navigate grief and loss can relate to, okay, so where am I in this? And what was my purpose in their life? And what is the purpose now that I move forward with? So when you talk about this was something that you felt on your heart to share with other people, I get that, because I'm a sharer too. I'm a storyteller. It's what I do for a living. And it made sense to me to share, but it took me a while. Yeah. So I have high respect for you for recognizing right away, like, this is what I need to do, and this is what people need. I want to take a break. When we come back, you shared something recently with the people who follow you and who are learning from you that I think, and you do this often, and I think really good points, just real to the point ideas about moving forward. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll rejoin that part of the conversation. I'm talking with Heather Quisel-Brown. She is sharing her story of loss, but more importantly, her story of moving forward and helping others do the same. We'll be back in just a moment. Hi, I'm back talking with Heather. Heather, you've been sharing a bit of your story and how you've navigated the loss of your husband, a sudden death that you couldn't have anticipated for sure, and how you've moved forward and helped other people do the same. One of the things that you shared recently, I just wanted to give people a glimpse of what you try to share with people to help them with that moving forward process. So there were 5 notes, if you will, or tips, if that's what you want to call them, that you shared. Let's go with it through them one by one, because I think they're important to this part of our discussion.
Yeah, something I noticed in my own grief, and just being in the grief space and continual conversations with people in, this sort of grieving heart, is I found in myself and others these sort of lies, these beliefs that we tend to churn and spin nonstop. And it really is part of the grief process, but so much of grief is the thoughts that we sit on and allow to continue to churn. And so I've got these 5 sort of lies that we really need to watch out for and stop believing so that we can heal and gain strength for the road ahead. So one of them is, I'll never be happy again. And this is classic. And when it happens, you really feel, I will never be happy again. It is such a horrible, horrible loss, right? But the truth is, many people, many people find happiness and choose happiness again.
It is a choice. It is a choice.
It is a choice. And I always, I had to learn to say to myself, are you open to the possibility that you could love again, that you could be happy again? Are you open to that idea? And that's like the beginning, that's just the beginning of that seed. The other lie that people sit on is I'll never fill in the blank. Like, I'll never love again. I'll never find somebody who will be a good father to my children. I will never be myself again. I will never fill in the blank for whatever that is for you. But the loss is so catastrophic that we really truly think life is over. And so when we can just be mindful of these catastrophic statements, these I'll never again statements, we just have to keep the door open a tiny bit, that there's possibility for something beautiful ahead. Maybe not right now because it's just too fresh, too raw, too new. But in the future, always keep that door open for yourself.
And I think what we tell ourselves becomes a truth, right?
Yes.
So the nevers and can't imagines and all of the things, and whether you've lost a spouse or a friend or a parent, whatever that is, some of the things aren't ever going to feel the same, but that doesn't mean they can never happen again. And I think that's one of the things I think that's so hard. I think it's almost a mistake to try to project too far in the future. You just got to really, in the beginning, take it a moment at a time, a day at a time, a week at a time. And I remember for us, it was very difficult. Weekends were hard because Wesley, my late husband, was so good at planning stuff for us. He planned everything. And even if we didn't have a plan for the weekend, we'd at least go to, his stepfather's ranch or go visit his mom and stepdad, whatever it was. And so weekends would come, and some of my friends and their children used to come with us. We'd go to a festival or do something. There was always something to do. And so weekends came, and I thought it was like crickets. What do I do with this time? How will I ever just load Hunter and I in the car and go somewhere on our own and enjoy that? How do I navigate a weekend? Weekdays were different. They were busier, but weekends, and it's different for everyone. But I remember the first time loading Hunter up in a car and going to a festival all by ourselves and seeing it through a different way, but still doing it. Just the act of doing something that you didn't think you could do starts to build upon itself, right?
So true. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And that brings me, that's a great segue into the third lie. And that is this idea that I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And it does feel impossible. And it is exactly like you said. It's like we do these tiny little things, sometimes each day, maybe just each week. But it's the small points of, I did this, then I can do that. And that belief in yourself and the belief in your ability to get through this, move forward, internalize this in a healthy way. That belief just gets bigger and bigger and bigger with each small thing. And for me, it was just making the bed, and I used to think you need to get up early and make the bed. And it was like, well, no, just make the bed today. Let making the bed be sort of a
whatever time you roll out of bed, because sometimes, whatever.
Yeah, even if it's 3 p.m. If it's 3 p.m., it's just
right.
That
I get
small
it. What you're saying. Yeah.
motion that says, "Hey, girl, we're gonna do today now."
Yeah.
Right. We're gonna do today now, and it might be 9 a.m. It might be 3 p.m. Shoot, it might even be 6 p.m. But it's like those small things that just give you the win. We just need some wins, small wins each day. Because you can
when you
do
talk
it.
about the long term of things. So I couldn't cook. I mean, I could cook like spaghetti in a casserole, but Wesley marinated the meat and he grilled the vegetables and he made everything taste so good. And I think just our son's now 22 and just graduated college. He's off on his own. He's a great cook. He loves watching Chef Ramsay, and he has all the things in his kitchen that he needs and he loves it. I'm so happy about that. But I really didn't learn how to cook until about 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And my dad just called me this last week for my prime rib recipe. And I even said to them, can you imagine how proud Wesley would be of me that you're calling me for advice about preparing a prime rib, because it just wasn't who I was. But, just even trying to make sure that my son ate healthily, I had to learn how to do that. It wasn't up to somebody else anymore. Same with like mowing the lawn or dealing with irrigation, whatever those things are. And then of course, if it's someone you've lost outside of your home, then that looks different too, right?
Yeah.
That looks different.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about, I think we're going to 4 and 5, right?
So, yeah.
Of those ideas. And just trying to, people right now are suffering. Sometimes I think about the community that we need when we lose someone, and community has been pretty difficult the last year and a half to even be surrounded by the people we love. And there's so much that's holding us back from the natural grief process. So hopefully this is helpful to people who are watching. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm talking with Heather Quisel-Brown. We've been talking about the loss of her husband and how you make it a priority, Heather, to make sure that people understand the importance of moving forward. And we're just talking from just a few of the things that I've read that you've shared. And we are getting to number 4 about these tips or these ideas, these lies that we tell ourselves, that we have to not have that dialogue going on in our head all the time if we expect to make any progress.
Yeah.
Little bits at a time or monumental progress over time.
Yeah.
What is
absolutely.
the 4th one? What is the 4th lie we were getting to?
So this is one we all do this, but why did this have to happen to me? Why did this happen to us? Why did this happen to my husband? Why did this happen to my children? Why am I going through this? And the thing about this question is there's no positive answer to it. And not only that, but there's really no acceptable answer to it. We'll never get the answer. We're not entitled to the answer. There is no answer. And so one of the things that I've always, and even in my life before, as I was coaching entrepreneurs, I was always saying, we've got to learn to ask better questions. And by what I mean by that is, this is a question, why did this happen to me? Why me? This is a question we cannot answer, and constantly puts us looking for the reasons. And the reasons will always be, I must have done something wrong. Maybe this is karma. Maybe I wished this on myself. Maybe it's my fault for having that fight or whatever. So the better questions are, okay, this happened to me. What will I do with this now? How will I raise my children alone? What are the things that are important to me now as a solo parent? What are the things I want to keep alive when it comes to my loved one? What are the things that I want to carry with me? What are the things I don't want to carry any longer? And so we have to get really, really, really thoughtful and intentional about the thoughts that we actually allow and humor in our own mind on a constant basis. Because, and this comes back to the conversation we had in the last segment, our thoughts are super powerful. And there's a big difference between pain and suffering. Pain is something that's it's physical, or you're emotionally feeling it. But suffering is because of the thoughts you're entertaining about that pain, about the loss, about the death. And we can actually continually perpetuate the suffering if we're not managing the thoughts, the lies, just the grief can be incredibly beautiful and healing, and just full of gratitude for what you got to have and experience in that life, in your life with that person.
I think that's true. A lot of people associate grief with suffering, and grief can be many different layers.
Grief can be many different layers. And, you know, I choose to experience grief as something that just brings up an intense gratitude. I am so blessed that I got to build a life with Larry Quisel, that I have these 3 children, you know, that I learned, and I have these memories, and I had a love like Larry Quisel gave to me, and that we shared together. Like, that's an honor that I had that. It would be wonderful if our story still continued. But for whatever reason, his story on this planet's over. Mine continues, which I choose to believe there's more memories and more love and more blessings and more gratitude for me to find. But it's my job to get out of suffering and get into the business of being like, I'm freaking blessed by that life.
Mhm.
And I'm really excited about what's up here too. I don't know what it is, but it's got to be wonderful, because this has got to be just as good, if not better, right? I
I
don't know.
felt
That's
very fortunate. It happened about 3 days after Wesley died, and I won't go into the whole long story now, but I had an experience where I felt like I got a lot of answers. And one of them was, one of the answers for me was, it's just Earth, Lisa. So you're never going to understand it. The longer you try, the harder it'll be. So every time I'd have that thought process of why and how am I gonna, and this isn't fair, and our son and all the things, I would think, okay, reminder, it's just Earth. Never gonna understand it. I'm not even supposed to. I know when I close my eyes for the last time, I will understand it. And that's enough for me. It has to be. Otherwise, I'm going to navigate this planet with this horrendous weight on my shoulders
yes,
of trying to understand something that as a human being,
yes,
I will never understand. It's just not
yeah,
even how we're made. It's
yes,
it's it's the biggest leap of faith we have to take.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely,
Well, I think the work that you do is really incredible. I feel like, you know, just trying to have that, to build a community that would not otherwise be there, and for you to do it your way, because somebody else might seek it from a different point of view, or a different personality, or a different life experience, and that's fine. But the people who need to find you are going to get this real kind of hard knocks. Come to me when you're ready to move forward, or if you feel like you're stuck, come to this community, because there's a difference between the people who aren't yet ready for that in the very, very early stages, or
yeah,
who find themselves kind of in a perpetual cycle of circling back to the suffering.
yeah,
And I have to be mindful of that myself whenever my son goes through a new transition, graduating college, his first job, he's calling me to whatever it is, the girl he fell in love with, whomever it is, whatever it is, that I think, man, I wish his dad was here. But that's a very different thing than, how will I get through this without him?
yeah,
It's okay to miss them, but I still want to be here for my son in my fullest, most wonderful capacity that I've learned to live.
yeah, absolutely. We
So,
learned very on, and when I say we, I mean me and my children, but it was really me. You know, everything comes from the mama.
mhm.
Um, we were in this constant state of dad should be here. And I remember sitting him down saying, this is the last time we will say that. From now on, it's wouldn't dad have loved this? Wouldn't he
Exactly.
have laughed? Wouldn't this be so fun for him? And
I
it
think we
changes
should end with
everything.
that, because that's a very good point of view. That's a very good thing to say, is wish he were here. Boy, wouldn't he have loved it. Because that means you're living a life that's fulfilling and joyful, and you're moving forward. It's perfect. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all your insight. I'd love to have you back sometime.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lisa.